Good morning and welcome. 1st of April, the year is rolling through in a way that none of us could have ever expected to have occurred. So I'm the Victorian Chamber of Commerce and Industry CEO, Paul Guerra. My pleasure to welcome you all here today. The questions have been plenty. So would you like to run us in the 5 minutes or so that we've got left? Let's handle as many as we can.
Sure. Look, one of the most common questions our policy team and our staff have been receiving in the past week, which has been reported through back to us, is how do we know if a business is eligible for the JobKeeper payments and how are they going to access that payment? Is it going to be part of Centrelink? When's the money going to come through? Can you provide just a little bit of an outline for some of the people asking those questions?
Yeah, so specifically for the JobKeeper payment, it'll be paid back to the business. And as Tamsin mentioned before, as a business, you need to register, but make sure you connect with your employees if you've stood them down before you do register them, because it will have implications in terms of the unemployment benefits they're receiving through Centrelink at this point in time. So register your business, make sure that you're talking to your staff about that, and then make sure that you meet the criteria before you go and register or move through to the next step. The Chamber can help with that. All the details in terms of where to access it are on the Victorian Chamber's website, so come back through there. It is a fairly straightforward process, but as Tamsin picked up, the payments won't start rolling till May, but they will be backdated to the start of this week, which is the 30th of March.
And for some of the workers, we've had somebody who's self-employed and doesn't have any employees. Is the JobKeeper payment eligible for them as well?
It is, and that's the beauty of this initiative. It covers everybody. So if you're self-employed or what is more commonly referred to as a sole trader, you absolutely can access this. So again, if your turnover's dropped by 30% year on year, right, and you're under that $1 billion, which I would imagine most sole traders are, then you will qualify.
An interesting one, that for some businesses, some of the employees work for multiple employers. How does that work when you have two jobs, for instance, an employee who has two jobs?
So you can only claim it once. So as an employee, you can't go to multiple employees and access the JobKeeper payment. So as an employee, you'll have to work out which company you do the majority of work for, and as the employer, you'll have to agree that as a company, that's where that employee does most of their hours with as well. So there will be catches in terms of that. So we're encouraging no one to double dip. Make sure you're really clear about that. The onus is on the employer. So if you're registering, make sure that you've had that conversation with that particular employee to say, well, actually, I'm including you in these payments, so you'll become effectively part of my organisation for the foreseeable future.
And everybody is going to be receiving this same wage. It's a flat amount per employee, is that right?
That's correct. It's $1,500 a fortnight. And look, in some cases, that's more than the wage that they're getting at the moment. In other cases, it's about the same, and in other cases, it's a bit less. And what the government's saying is if it's a bit less, please, as an employer, top that up so that each individual employee isn't being impacted negatively by this. But when it's all said and done, the $1,500 is more than what the current unemployment benefit, even with the special COVID allowance, is paying. So, and that's the beauty of what the federal government have done here.
Great. And one of the questions that came through earlier, actually from somebody who's on the webinar right now, from Daniel, he did say he's raised a question that I think we've had a lot of conversations about this. What incentive does an employee have to work full time if they can get the same salary to work half a day? And it comes back to that. What if the $1,500 is only half of what they would have been potentially earning as a full-time wage? What's our advice to employers in this situation?
Stay tuned to the Victorian Chamber. We've actually asked that question and we're trying to get some clarity around that. There's a school of thought that says Actually, you have to stay employed full time, and the employer has to top that up. There's another school of thought that says there may be a conversation to be had with the individual employee around, well, if that represents 3 days a week, then you can do that. We don't have a final answer on that yet. We are working back with the relevant department, and we will have an answer on that for you. But again, back through the victorianchamber.com.au. The good news is, at the very least, we're keeping the business and the employee connected so that when it comes time to bounce back, we have that opportunity. But importantly, it means that that employee still has a job to go to, which is great from a whole range of things, including mental health.
Thank you. And there were a lot of worried businesses out there about retail lease and worried about paying their rent because obviously it's a major overhead and the cash flow has been hit hard. Are any businesses at risk of being evicted anymore?
So there's still a way to go in terms of the whole rental conversation, but we had some good news on Sunday night with the Prime Minister announcing a 6-month moratorium on both residential and commercial evictions, which is a great step forward. What we'd say to each business, work with your landlord. And in some cases, we're hearing some really positive stories. In some cases, the conversations are still a bit frustrated. And in the case of the state government, that's been really positive because there has been rent relief given for the buildings that they own. And similarly for councils like the City of Melbourne have given some concessions in terms of the buildings that they own as well for their tenants. This is going to come down to a conversation between yourself and the landlord. I suspect there's still a way to play with the federal government and some more initiatives that they have been talking about and have been flagging but haven't got through yet. But ultimately, it's a conversation between you and the landlord at this point in time. And if you need to, link your bank into that. But again, the great news is on Sunday night, there was a 6-month moratorium on evictions, which covers both residential and commercial.
Thank you. And for a business who's been forced to close, there's one here who's been forced to close because they're not deemed to be an essential business. They're finding it difficult to access support because they only employ a few workers and they can't take advantage of the state government's decision to refund payroll taxes for the last financial year. What other support can they access to help them?
So the JobKeeper payment came out on Tuesday and Monday, so that's a great step forward, so please have a look at that. The state government's got a range of initiatives in place, including the $10,000 grant, which went live over the weekend as well, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but that's available to all businesses that have been affected by the stage 1, 2 and 3 restrictions that don't receive the payroll tax benefit, but do trade over more than 75,000 and that aren't sole traders, so they would apply for that and qualify for that as well. The banks have been really generous in terms of some of the loan agreements that they've put in place as well, as has the federal government in terms of some of the loan that's available there. But again, back through business.vic.gov.au for the $10,000 grants. And if you need more specific information, come in through the Victorian Chamber website. We've got more specific information for you there. Well, Anne, I'm just looking at the time, and unfortunately, time's upon us, and that might wrap up for all the time that we've got questions for today. But again, we've recorded all the questions, and we'll provide answers to those in writing back on the Vic Chamber website a bit later on today. So thank you. I really appreciate everybody making time to listen in today. I think this is a great week to do your next phase of planning. Yeah, make sure you know what's available to you. You know, the JobKeeper payment that came out through the week, understand that and come and talk to us if you need more information on that. The other grants and initiatives that have been progressively made available over the past 2 weeks. You owe it to your business, you owe it to your employees to make the decisions you need to keep the business going, to make sure that you can bounce back. There is plenty of help available. The $10,000 grants that I talked about previously, they're now live with the state government. They'll be paid within 5 to 7 days from the time that you complete the application. And I can tell you the application is very straightforward to complete. So don't delay straight after this, head to business.vic.gov.au for more information. But basically, to qualify, business has to be based in Victoria, has to be affected by stage 1, 2 or 3 restrictions. The business has to earn more than $75,000 in a year, but the business has to be under the payroll tax threshold, which for those of you know, it's your payroll, your total wage bill must be under $650,000 per annum, and the business can't be a sole trader. So there's $10,000 there to help you through the next period as well. Of course, please stay in touch with the Victorian Chamber website for more information, and that is victorianchamber.com.au, and of course the state government's website, which is business.vic.gov.au. There's a whole bunch of valuable information on both those websites, and as you know, and as we've been with the journey, we're here to help. So thank you, enjoy your week. I hope to see you next Wednesday. Thank you.